All right, boils and ghouls. So I'm so happy that this won the poll. It's not that I don't like the Babadook. I think it's a great movie. But the kid, Sam, this kid, he's up there with Bob from House by the Cemetery and A Blade in the Dark and Manhattan Baby and all the other Italian movies. And the kid from the Shining miniseries as just the most annoying fucking kids in horror. So I didn't really feel up to watching The Babadook, and I really was in the mood to watch Torso from Sergio Martino from 1973. Now, as big of an Italian horror fan that I am, I got into it a lot later, like from when I was 6, when I first saw Halloween and started with horror, maybe in my teens. And there's still a lot of movies by directors in the Italian horror genre that I haven't seen. And I've seen a handful of Martino's movies. I did a review on Case of the Scorpion's Tail, which is a very good giallo. But I've seen that. I've seen The Strange Vice of Mrs. Ward. That's another good one. Your Vice is a Locked Room and Only I Have the Key is one of the greatest titles to a movie, and that's one of my favorite movies of his. And I saw, what is it, Slave to the Cannibal God, or one of those cannibal movies that he did later on. And I think that's all the Martino films that I've seen, except for Torso here, which is by far my favorite Martino film. This is one of the best giallo films. The score to this by Guido and Maurizio De Angelis, I think I got that right, is fantastic. And this is a film that grew on me a lot in the last few years since I started the channel. That happened with a handful of other Italian horror films or giallos that I didn't really love at first watch. But then when I started doing the channel and talking about some of these movies and then meeting friends in the community and other channels that are into Italian horror, I started rewatching some of them and checking out other movies and grew a bigger appreciation for movies that I didn't really care for that much on the first and maybe only watch. But the score in this movie is fucking phenomenal. Are you serious? With the tribal drums and the guitar, the E minor, it's strumming. And then the flute, it sounds almost like a pan flute, but not really, but close. All of that is just used excellently throughout this movie. In the kill scenes, every time it starts up, it's very, very tense, but it also gets your adrenaline fucking pumping. But we have a very familiar face in Italian horror starring in this, Susie Kendall, from Dario Argento's The Bird with the Crystal Plumage and Umberto Lenzi's Spasmo, which is another good movie. He's another director, Lenzi, that I have to dive into more movies of his. I've seen maybe 6, 7 tops. But, I mean, everything I've seen by him, for the most part, is great. So, but check out Spasmo if you haven't seen that. She was in a decent amount of things, and she plays Jane in this film. And she's attending an international college in Italy, and a bunch of brutal murders take place against women on the campus by this crazed sex maniac. Pure giallo, but the style to this movie and the aforementioned score, and there are very tense scenes in this, and there are great effects and kills in this, and it's just brutal and sleazy, and then there's tits all over this movie, like with a lot of Martino movies. It's just like a raw, grimy, almost slasher film, and this is considered by a lot of people to be one of the earliest examples of a actual slasher film. I always say Twitch of the Death Nerve from Mario Bava, which is 2 years before this, but to each their own. This one is definitely up there, though. So if you haven't seen Torso by Sergio Martino, and if you're not a big Italian horror fan and you want to maybe check some more out and get into it, this is one of the movies to check out. Like, especially outside of what I call the holy trinity of Italian horror, Mario Bava, Lucio Fulci, and Dario Argento, excluding those classic directors and the films that most people would recommend to others to get them into Italian horror, then yeah, Torso by Martino would be one of the go-tos that I would recommend somebody. So let's talk Torso from 1973. So, with all Italian horror movies, and I say this every time I do a video on an Italian horror film, that I only love one of the titles, because there are so many different titles to all of these films. The other titles are Carnal Violence and The Bodies Bear Traces of Carnal Violence, which I'll give it, it's not a bad title, I'll be honest. But I vastly prefer Torso. Just like in every other instance, there's only one title to rule them all. So I like how this movie starts off with showing you the motive for the killer, but you don't know it. But it straight up shows you the threesome that Franz gets blackmailed into. So you see that play out right on the opening credits. So Jane and her friends are leaving Professor Franz's class at the college, and this is such a great fucking scene. One of her friends and her boyfriend are fucking around in the car, tits are out, like I said, tits all throughout this movie. And you hear the score and just how simplistic it is with the 3 notes, and then it just keeps going up a half step until, the real epic part comes in. But the way it creeps along, and the sound design is excellent to this movie. They turn the lights on of the car and they see the killer run. The boyfriend ends up getting out and running after him, and then she's left alone in the car. Score's creeping along again, and the best part kicks in, and the killer finds her and grabs the scarf that we see throughout this movie and strangles her. And then that's another thing in this movie, because he's this sex maniac, and we see the clips that are quickly inserted with a lot of the kills with the doll, because at the end we find out that he lost his mind basically when he had his brother die when he fell trying to get a doll for this girl. And that whole doll symbology and with the eyes, like all of that is used excellently in the best scene in this movie in a bit. But what I was saying, the thing with this movie, after every kill basically, he starts, fondling them. And it's very sexual and stuff. And that's what makes this movie very sleazy. And then great effects work when he stabs her, like right between her breasts, like right here. Very quick, but it looks good. Then you see the police at the scene of the crime the next morning, and the boyfriend's throat is cut. That looks really good too. Oh, and let's talk the look of the killer in this movie. I think it's one of the best looks to a killer in a horror film. Like, it looks so good. His whole mask, the red and black scarf that I mentioned earlier that he strangles them all with, dressed all in black with the gloves. It looks so creepy. Like, if you saw this dude in the middle of the woods or a swamp, you would be shitting yourself. Such a simple yet effective design for a killer. This is such a pretty movie too. Large in part to, the cinematography, of course, but the location. I'm not sure exactly where they filmed this in Italy, but that's something a lot of these early 70s Giallo films have in common. Just beautiful cinematography because of the locations. And the killer isn't the only deranged fucker in this movie. Like with many of these movies, we have, what's his name? Stefano? The guy who's with the girl, and then he ends up, strangling the shit out of her and almost kills her. So there's a lot of demented folk in this. Then we have a scene with Carol, one of the friends of Jane. She's getting fondled by two guys on the couch and she's not into it at all. And there's a band playing and stuff. Like, it's really entertaining, to say the least. But she ends up leaving the party. And this is the best scene in the film. And shout out to my boy Darren over at Subjective Perspective Collective for making me appreciate this scene a lot more, because he mentioned in an old video of mine in a comment or something that this is one of his favorite scenes of all time. And the next time I watched Torso after that, it really hit me more than it ever has. And now I do view it as this is one of the most tense scenes and chase sequences leading to a kill that I could think of. Like, this is in the top 20. I should do a list of that, like the top 20 most tense chase sequences in horror. But she's walking around the woods and it's all muddy on the ground and there's fog all over the place. And again, the sound design's fantastic. Like earlier in the prior kill, her friend, when she screams for her boyfriend, it echoes. And just the sound of the wind, like, I know that sounds like a little thing, but it's a testament to the sound design. The sound of the wind blowing, it feels so authentic. Like, it feels like you're there. And because of the grimy look of this movie and how raw it looks, it adds so much to it. It feels so real. And the score's creeping along. You see the killer in the mist in the background. And then he appears. And then she falls down into the puddle of mud. Remember them? And the score is at full blast, man. And he takes the scarf off slowly. And he just starts strangling her with it. And then again, he turns her over and pulls her shirt and starts caressing her breasts. You see the doll image again. And a close-up on the eyes of the doll. And he takes the fingers and pokes the woman's eyes like right through. Then he takes the blade out, and the glimmer on the blade's great, and cuts her, and then slowly the blood drips into the water and the mud, and it fades out. It's an excellent scene. So the cops come to the college here, the school. If they see anybody who purchased a red and black scarf that the killer used, to please report it. And it's not spying or ratting or anything like that. But earlier, Carol saw the doctor, he's a doctor, right, buy one of those scarves from a street vendor. So there's a little red herring here. And that's one thing with this movie that makes it one of the best Giallo films. Because I've said this too. Pure Giallos that don't have anything else that really stand out or make them different from the slew of them that released after Bird with the Crystal Plumage, especially, like, got really big in Italy. If the characters aren't interesting, if the music isn't fantastic, if the style isn't good, if it's not directed well, then I don't care for it. Like, there's a lot of Giallo films I've checked out, and some that are pretty decently to highly regarded that I just can't get into. I find the pacing to be very uneven, and the characters to be very one-dimensional. And I feel like that is a common criticism from some people who aren't into these movies, like, at all. But this movie has all of those in spades. Like, great characters, good performances, the style, the editing, the cinematography, the sound design, the score, the tension, the sleaziness, all of that. That's what separates this Giallo from the who knows how many hundreds, if not more, that we got bombarded with in the late 60s, early 70s, throughout maybe the end of the 70s. So then one of the other friends, Danny, she ends up talking to Stefano, who is in love with her or some shit. And then she has a flashback, like she remembers seeing him one day talking with her, that he was wearing one of the scarves. So she starts to think that it could be him. And then she gets out of town with Jane and some other friends. And then we get the great kill with the street vendor guy who sold the scarves to the killer, because we see him call the killer and say that a police detective just stopped by and was asking a lot of questions, and he basically blackmails him. This guy's got terrible luck when it comes to getting blackmailed, this killer, but he ends up running over the street vendor and like backing up repeatedly and just smushing his face against the wall. That all looks good. And it's not just the iconic score from this film, it's the entire score. The very light-hearted music that we hear that contrasts very well with the tribal music, which is so great. And then we get a scene with two of the other friends who came with Jane and the other one to get away for a bit. And they start lesing out, which, I mean, I don't even know how that would work unless they just, I don't know, scissor or something.
Oh, yeah! Scissor me, Xerxes! Yeah, scissor!
But it's also the slight variations in instrumentation to the main theme throughout all the kill sequences that really adds to it also. Because then we have a peeping Tom who's randomly, watching the two girls scissor. And then the killer sees this peeping Tom and ends up chasing him and killing him. But during that scene, the score, the slow notes, instead of being played on piano, they're being played by a bass. So it's those subtle little changes that really excel the score for me. If it wasn't for the score and Martino's style and directing and the tension in this movie, I know that's a lot, but if you take those out, this movie would be nowhere near as masterfully made and a favorite of mine as if it didn't have all that. Especially the score. If this didn't have the score, it would take this movie down a decent amount. Not too much, but a noticeable difference. So Peepin' Tom No Jerry, he ends up getting his throat slashed, but it's very quick. I mean, it's nothing. So, I mean, that one's kind of, a letdown in the kill department. Then Jane falls down the stairs in this house, and she ends up seeing ghosts.
But ghosts can't even eat. Freddy's so dumb.
It does look rather scrumptious.
Another scene here where the cinematography shines, and it looks beautiful when the girls go down to the stream, and just the trees everywhere, the stream's flowing, it looks beautiful. So the girls end up hearing the doorbell ring, and they go up to it. And with the whole red herring, this whole movie of Stefano being possibly the killer and seeing him a million times with the scarf on, it's a cool little jump scare. You see Stefano real quick with the scarf, but then his body falls forward and the girls scream and freak out as the music blasts in. That's great. Then the next morning or sometime afterwards, Jane awakens because they overdosed the shit out of her with whatever type of pain meds just for falling down the stairs and hurting her ankle. And she stumbles upon the bodies of all her friends that are left, 3 of them. And I don't know if maybe they filmed kill sequences for these. I mean, all the effects on the bodies and stuff look really good, but I wonder if Martino filmed kills and they just didn't work out, or they were cut for being too violent. Actually, maybe this is why, because I forgot about this. She sees him briefly, I mean from a distance, so you don't see too much, but she sees the killer sawing and dismembering one of the bodies. So that might be why he didn't film kills, because he knew this was going to be another disturbing sequence after that. And then he walks out and leaves. And Jane ends up trying to run for her life and get out of here. And I wonder if this is one of the earliest examples of a final girl, running from a killer and trying to escape and tripping and falling. Although technically she doesn't trip, it's because she hurt her ankle from earlier and it kind of just gives out. So she had some shit against her, if you know what I'm saying. But still, she trips. So I wonder if this is one of the earliest examples. I'm trying to think, but I'm not going to waste your time thinking out. The killer ends up leaving for a bit and traps Jane in the house. And then the ending is great to this. This is how you do a great reveal of a killer. This is how you pull off a killer that has a great motive. I'm looking at you, Scream 6. We see that it's Franz, and he tells Jane the whole story of his brother passing away and dying and falling while he was trying to get the girl's doll. And I love how he compares all women to dolls. You're different, he says to Jane. But then he tries strangling the hell out of her. And then the young doctor, Roberto, that's his name, he ends up coming and having a struggle with Franz and ends up poetically kicking him off the cliff, and he falls to his death. And it ends. So that's Sergio Martino's amazing film, Torso, from 1973. Again, this is just a top-tier Giallo film. This is my favorite Martino film of what I've seen. So there's definitely a lot of other films of his later films especially, that I need to check out. But alright guys, hope everyone's having a good morning, afternoon, or night. I'll talk to you soon. Take care everybody. Alright, well, I can never get that right on the first take of any video. Now, as big of an Italian, are you kidding? And we also have a horror. He's in another. But alright guys, hope and then he leaves and walks out. And then he walks out and leaves. And then he walks out and leaves. But I don't know if it stopped. And he grabs the scarf, but she ends. And then and Carol. Why am I laughing? I don't know. So when they end up going to the farm, and it's not just the iconic. See another scene. But alright guys, hope